and welcome to Mission West Virginia. I'm your host, Rachel Kinder, and today my guest is Kristen Adkins. She is a certification specialist with Pressley Ridge, which is one of our 10 foster and adoption agencies in West Virginia. Welcome, Kristen.
Thank you for having me.
It's nice to have you here today. It's been a little bit since we've had someone from your agency on the show. And I understand you're here today to talk about not only your work, but some personal experience with foster care and adoption.
Yeah, if you'd like to know about that, I would love to talk about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's start with career-wise. We'll start with that. So I understand you do work at Pressley Ridge, but you started your career in education. Is that right?
Yeah, I started as a teacher, middle school science teacher, and kind of transitioned out of that to be a stay-at-home mom, especially during the time when we were adopting children.
Right.
Because it was a lot to take in. So I was a stay-at-home mom, and then when they're older now, I did some subbing, in the school system, and then I decided it was time to go back to work. And so when Pressley Ridge had a position open for trainer and certification specialist, I applied and then got the job. I'll be there almost a year.
Okay. Well, that explains why we had not met until the other day.
Yeah.
So for our guests who might not know, West Virginia is a privatized foster care system, and there are 10 foster care and adoption agencies in West Virginia, Pressley Ridge being one of them. So if you want to be a foster parent, you have your choice of the various agencies that work in your county. Could be all 10, could be a certain amount of them. But you work out of Fayette County, right? Or you
live in Fayette
Raleigh?
County. Yeah, I live in Fayette County, but work in Raleigh County.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, and Pressley Ridge is all over the whole state.
Right.
So our branch goes all the way to up to Huntington, and we cover the southern West Virginia, my colleague Eddie and I. And then we have 2 certification specialists for the north.
Okay.
And so any county basically can be a foster parent with Pressley Ridge. Because
Okay.
we cover everywhere.
That's good to know. So tell me what a certification specialist does.
So a certification specialist would make sure that your home is safe and that you are a quality parent, a quality person who is capable of taking care of children who've been through trauma. So you would apply to be a foster parent, and our agency, we actually call them treatment foster parents.
Right.
Because you are learning how to engage with the child therapeutically a little. And so we do our training just a little differently. So you would take our classes, and then after that I would kind of study you and your family and your history. And so I would get to know you very well, and then you would fill out a lot of paperwork. I would write a home study, which is about like an 8 or 10 page paper on you and your family. And after all that's done, the paperwork is done, I come and inspect your home and make sure it's safe and that you have the proper fire extinguisher for the kitchen and you have handrails and all
Right.
those technical things. And then once all that is done, we do an audit. And once you're audited and everything is fine, then we can open you as a foster home.
Okay. And it's my understanding Pressley Ridge was kind of the first agency in the state to pilot and run treatment foster care. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's the only treatment foster agency that I know of. I actually applied for a few other jobs before getting this job at Pressley Ridge, and this is the first time I had heard treatment foster parent.
Right.
So yeah, it's pretty new.
And so, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's my understanding that means that the foster parents get more training and are more equipped to handle children who've experienced trauma?
Yes, absolutely. Our training is evidence-based. So what that means is we not only train you, but we collect a lot of data. So you will be doing some documentation, and based on that documentation, we would help you therapeutically interact with the child. We'll give you strategies as to how to keep the children safe, not only physically, but emotionally and mentally. So you would have a strategy, for example, redirection. And if you see the child's starting to get into trouble, you just redirect them to a different activity. And so it really helps with the behavior of the children that we see, having those strategies. And we train those strategies in our training program, so you know them from day one.
And do you find that your families feel pretty equipped once they start parenting, once kids start getting placed in their homes?
Yeah, actually, the feedback we get from our training is that they really feel prepared.
Okay.
And so after the training, we'll do a survey, and we do one for the state, and then we do one for our agency.
Okay.
So we're always collecting data, and then we do annually survey our families as well to see how they feel, if they feel still equipped, if they're still happy with Pressley Ridge, if they're still wanting to continue to do foster care, and if they're thinking about not doing it, why. And so then we can make corrections and support the family even more.
That's great.
Yeah.
And so does your agency offer opportunities for foster parents to get to know each other, support groups or events or anything like that?
Well, I believe that before COVID.
It's a famous phrase these
Yes.
days. Yeah.
We had more opportunities. Currently, we get together once a year in the summer.
Okay.
We'll go to Lake Stevens in Raleigh County, and we have like a picnic. Everybody brings food, and we do a little training, and then we can fellowship with each other. The kids play at the splash pad.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. And so just for anyone in our audience who might not know, you take placements from the Department of Human Services. So it's very newly rebranded as DOHS, Department of Human Services, instead of DHHR, since we have divided into 3 parts. So we keep fumbling over that, but it's DHS now, or DOHS now. So you don't have access to any different kids. You just get called just like any other agency does, right? When they have children who need placed.
Right. So we would get a referral from either, from the agency worker, if they're interagency, and or the department, the DHS.
Right.
Yeah. We get referrals, of course, from them, from the child-specific worker. And so we take them based on matching with the family. So we just really try not to just place them in a home, but match them up with an appropriate family who really can take care of the child, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally. And they have the capacity to, interact and be present with the child, not just house them physically. So we really do try to match our families with the children when we get referrals, and we have open beds.
Okay. So we are doing a statewide recruitment campaign. All 10 agencies are participating, along with some other individuals. And we have a facts versus myths quiz on the recruitment website. And I think I had shared when I saw you a couple weeks ago, a lot of people are answering these questions wrong, basically. And one of the questions was, true or false, you don't get a choice in who is placed in your home. And that is false, but we are seeing a lot of people who think that that's the truth. So you're saying basically you would call a family and they could say yes or no to this placement.
Yeah, exactly. There's no pressure to take a child that you don't feel comfortable with. For example, you can say, I only want boys under 5.
Right.
And so when we get referrals for boys under 5, if you have room in your home for 2 boys under 5, we'll place them with you. There's no pressure to take a child, especially if you don't feel like it's a good match or a good fit for your family. If you have all girls and then we try and put boys there, that might not work out for the best.
So do you find that you have families that kind of span the age range and genders, and you have families that are equipped for different ages of kids?
Yes. So our foster parents are certified usually 0 to 18.
Okay.
However, their preference may be 5 and under or 10 and under. So the biggest need we have is really for parents who will take older kids,
Right.
the teenagers, and I think that's statewide probably.
Yep.
Because everybody wants the littler kids, I guess, because it just fits more in their family. I don't know exactly the reason. But for me, when we were doing foster care, I wanted kids younger than my youngest. And so
That's really common.
that's hard.
Yeah.
That's common. And that's really hard to get teenagers if you're raising your own family and you have,
Right.
you know, a 10-year-old. You don't want to put an older child in there with them. That's just what we did, and nothing right or wrong about it. But we would like to see more people open to taking teenagers, and because there's a big need, and people are kind of scared maybe to take teenagers. But what we found is that they're just regular kids who need some support, structure, love, you know, and just someone to talk to, really.
And even if you take younger kids, they all turn into teenagers.
Exactly,
So it can't be totally
Exactly.
avoided. I know that some adoption professionals suggest that you don't foster or adopt outside of birth order. So, you know, just as though kids were naturally born to your family. And I understand that. And I do get that question when people call, but I do say, even though there's a fair amount of advice, you know, to follow that, it's still an individual choice for your family.
Exactly.
So tell me about what led you. So we were talking outside of the show, and I realized that you had personal experience with foster care adoption before your professional experience, which
Yes.
Usually goes the other way around. But so that's interesting. What led you to choose to foster?
Well, at first we wanted just to expand our family a little bit, and
How many kids did you have when you
I
made
had
that decision?
2 girls.
Okay.
And so we were just wanting to expand our family a little bit, but we had gone to church with a family who did foster care as I was growing up, and so that just led us to have that discussion about it. What if we could do this, or, you know, would you like to do it? Yes. So we called a friend of mine named Amber, and she was actually a social worker at the DHHR who did adoptions.
Okay.
And we were like, perfect. So and we talked to her on the phone, and she kind of told us about adopting through the state. And back then, you could just be an adoptive-only home.
Right, prior to 2015.
Okay, yes.
And you could get certified through the department.
Yeah,
Yep.
so we were certified, and all that was taken care of. And we waited what felt like an eternity. It was probably about 6 months before we got a call for our children. And the day they came, my little girl was at the bottom of the steps. We were at the top looking down, and she looked up and said, "Are you my new mommy?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, yes, I'm my new mommy." And so we just did adoption at that point.
Okay.
And later on, my friend was also going through the foster system or whatever, and she was a foster mom. She wanted us to do respite for her. So we renewed our fingerprints, we renewed all of our documentation so I could do respite for her.
Would you tell our audience what respite is for anyone who might not know?
Sure. Respite is when I'm doing foster care and I need a break, or I have a family reunion or some travel thing that I really can't take children to. I may call you as another foster mom, and you could take the children for the weekend or the week, depending on the circumstances or my needs.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So she was going to do respite I was going to do respite for her, and once I got on that list, they started calling me for other kids, and so we started just doing foster care again.
Okay.
And then we had so many kids come through, and they came and went back home. And the last 3 that we got, we actually adopted those 3 children.
Okay.
So then we had the 4 plus the 3, and we were like, okay, we're pretty full. So,
So how old were your girls when you very first started this process?
my girls were 10 and probably 6.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So you had a 10 and 6-year-old, and then you adopted it. Were they siblings?
They were siblings.
Okay.
A girl was 5, and the boy was 3.
Okay. Okay. And then the next was a sibling group of 3, or?
Yes, the last group that we had that we adopted were
Also
a sibling
siblings.
group of 3. Yes.
And that's something I really try to tell people is not just teens is a big need, and people willing to take sibling groups is a big need, because 7's a lot of kids. There's not a lot of people out there that would go up to that number. So that one's hard, because if a family already has kids and then we say, would you please add a sibling group? A lot of people initially say they want to start with 1, and I do a lot of explaining that a lot of times kids don't come into foster care as just only children. So
That's true. Hardly ever, really.
Yeah.
Hardly ever. There's 1.
another question I could get a lot is, how does fostering affect the kids that I already have? Can you talk about that, how that worked for your girls?
Yeah. So my girls, I feel like, were fairly mature, and at 10 and 6. And so we just had a conversation with them. Would you be interested in being, big sisters to some children who may not have a family and they might not have parents? And they were really on board with it, and they helped us. And when we got the call, they cleaned their room and they fixed everything up, and they were excited about it.
That's great.
Yeah. And then when we started doing foster care the second time, one of my girls just gave up her bedroom. She's like, I'll just go over here and sleep with my sister.
Wow.
And then she can have the newest placement could have this bedroom. So they were really self-sacrificing a little bit.
Yeah.
They really did empathize, I guess, with the situations that.
Yeah, it sounds like they really understood
Yeah.
the goal of what you were doing. How did any of the kids in your home handle it when you fostered and then those kids were not adopted? Those kids maybe reunified or went somewhere else?
Yeah, we had several reunifications, and one set of siblings actually went to be adopted by a friend of mine.
Okay.
So we still kind of keep in touch with them a little bit, but
That's great when that can happen.
it was. We got invited to their adoption party and everything,
Yeah.
so it was just really sweet. And the thing that we did really was we just grieved.
Yeah.
When they left, there was a little, maybe 4 and 2-year-old. I don't know exactly how they were, but when they went back home, we just took some time to grieve, and
Yeah.
we pack up their things, and I have a really good relationship with the mom.
I was going to ask. That's
Absolutely,
wonderful.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, we communicate, of course, on Facebook, and they've been to my house since then.
Okay.
For the longest time, I would see the girl out in public or whatever, and she would say, "Mommy,"
Oh.
just call me Mommy, and I'm like, "Oh, how sweet." But we just gave some time to grieve, and then we would say yes the next time we felt like it was a good fit for our family. So it's good to build those relationships with the families so that when they need a break, they might call you. And so it can still maintain that
Absolutely.
relationship. I'm friends with the grandmother of the children, the mom of the children, the aunt of the children, so I'm kind of still present with them a little bit.
That's really a best case scenario.
Yeah, and he just turned 12. The
Okay.
little boy that was 18 months, I think,
Oh,
when
wow.
he came. He just turned 12, so I was like, happy birthday on Facebook.
That's a long-term relationship you had
Yes.
with them. We really try to tell people that, and that we hope the field is moving more towards open relationships between birth families, foster families, adoptive, extended families, and I do end up seeing a lot more relationships like that. And we try to tell people, you may not adopt these children. All children in foster care don't go on to be adopted, but it can be really important to be there for the kids when they need it, so that they can, you can be part of their story where they get to go back to their family.
Yeah, I feel like I didn't realize that the first time we were adopt
Yeah,
only.
right.
I didn't have the knowledge that I do now, but the knowledge I have now would say, as long as they're safe,
Right.
then keep that relationship alive, because more relationships mean a healthier child.
Yes.
The 3 youngest ones that we adopted, we see their grandmother regularly. We met at McDonald's for the first time like 2 years ago, I think.
Okay.
And there was lots of tears, and it was at Christmas time. We exchanged gifts. And I just feel like it helps them have a sense of their past too, because like I love to hear stories about my grandparents and my
Right.
parents.
Right.
And so now they have that connection with their family and their grandmother's, upbringing. And then we found out that she was actually adopted as well.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and she's so supportive of me. She's like, I'm glad that you have the kids. So we just treat her like grandma, because she's grandma. She is their grandma.
I see a lot of people worry about kids being confused about relationships, but I have not really seen a lot of that, because parenting is so hard. It really takes a village, and a lot of times it's a bonus to have all of these extra people to love your kids, or for you to love kids that have returned to their families. It can a lot of times just be a support.
Yeah, it is. And we did get together with like their maternal grandmother's family, because we connected with her, and they were so nice to me. I kind of was a little bit leery about going, like I was the one that took them from, like in their mind they might think I was the one that took them away from their family. But they were so loving and supportive, and then actually knew someone there that knew my grandparents, and so we reconnected, and everyone was just nice and just happy, because I'm taking good care of their girls, their children, their family. So they just welcomed me into their family.
So how old is your oldest, and how old's your youngest?
My oldest, 25, and the youngest is 9.
Oh, wow. Okay. So how many do you still have at home?
I only have 3 at home right now.
Okay.
So 15, 12, and 9.
So, but at one point you had 7.
Yeah, at one point
altogether.
I had 7.
Yeah.
Yes, and I didn't work outside the home at that point.
Right.
So
when you applied at Pressley Ridge, and your background was education, were they excited to get someone who had all of this personal experience with foster care adoption?
Yeah, actually I believe so. I think that they were happy to see a different perspective, and the actual experience of bringing the kids in the home, and so we can look at things a little differently now than we did before, because I have that real life experience.
Right.
And then I have an education background, so training is really, my passions, and I really enjoy doing that, and
That's
training
great.
and supporting, even after the training's over, still supporting the parents to get, finished with all their paperwork. And then every month we do some in-service classes.
Because they need to have so many hours a year, right? Even after your home is open. 12 or?
Well, for Pressley, it's 24. I'm not sure
gosh,
what
okay.
state is, but
Okay.
it's 24. And so we offer like Zoom in-services. And then we also send out monthly homework,
Okay.
for them to do. It's kind of like a paper and pencil type of thing, where
Okay.
you read and summarize.
So it sounds like your agency puts a lot of emphasis on ongoing education.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. A lot on education in general, and we've really seen really good results with that, because I feel like children get moved a lot when they're in foster care. They
Right.
move around, and our training kind of helps you see that when those behaviors start surfacing is not the time to call and say, hey, this kid's too much for me to handle. Can you put them somewhere else? With our training, we see less and less of that. And also we have treatment coordinators that come in the home, and they'll support you also. So not only are we supporting, the kids with their MDT meetings and everything, but our treatment coordinators help parents come up with strategies to help the kids. So if you're having big, baffling behaviors,
Right.
then we can sit down and like kind of talk. What have you tried? Have you tried this? Have you thought about that? Oh, I've never thought about that. So then we can work through those issues instead of just moving them physically to somewhere else and starting all over.
Which is so damaging to the kids.
It is so damaging.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Yeah, no, I can't, because it's not just moving homes, it's moving schools, it's changing therapists, it's changing doctors. We have a lot of programming related to helping kids close the gaps because of so many moves.
The average, I think, I read is 7.
I was going to say that too. Actually,
7
that's what I had in my
moves.
head. So
And can you imagine even changing jobs 7 times in 2 or 3 years?
I've been at the same place for 18 years, so no.
I've been here 1, but I don't want to change anytime soon.
Yeah.
I can't imagine changing my home and my rules and my, the way someone cooks and, everything.
Right. And I did a training last week at the social work conference, and someone asked, what seems to be the determining factor in foster parents who don't disrupt placements? And in my observation, it's really just foster parents who are really determined to make it work, who really go in there with that mindset that, these kids are going to stay, we're going to make it work. Obviously, you can't always. Sometimes it becomes unsafe, or kids have needs you can't meet. But that's my observation, is that seems to be a big factor, is just determination to make it stick.
Yeah, they have to have fortitude.
Yeah.
And some grit that comes with taking on children that aren't yours, and then trying to help them heal from the trauma of just, if nothing else, being taken from their home, or they're removed from their home, and then come to your house and try to adjust and, not only survive all that, but thrive.
Right.
And we want our parents to be successful, so we have a lot of support, and I think that's a determining factor as well.
Absolutely.
Support, someone that you can talk to if you have a bad day or a bad experience, or you had a bad court case, or an MDT didn't go the way you think it's going to go, because it never goes the way you think it's going to go.
Nothing ever goes the way it's predicted.
So having those support systems in place, I think, is huge.
I would agree. So we have just enough time for my favorite question.
Oh, no.
What's your favorite part about your job?
Oh, my favorite part is I would say my foster parents are my favorite part. Getting to talk to people who are actually passionate about foster care, and they want to get into it for all the right reasons. And then I would also have to say, equal with that is the people I work with. The staff at Pressley Ridge are just amazing, supportive, even personally, if you're dealing with something personal. They just kind of rally around you and support you, make you feel okay, like everything's going to be all right, and give you a minute to process what you're going through. And that's what I like to do with the foster parents too. Just give them some support, some silent support, perhaps.
Sounds like you found a great fit.
I have.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been Kristen Adkins with Pressley Ridge, and this has been another episode of Mission West Virginia. We hope to see you next month.